Hi guys. One of the things I kind of fundamentally believe is that everyone has a story, and I believe that no matter who you are, your story is both powerful and important. It's important because it shapes your identity. It's a kind of a record, a sum total of the processes of what has made you who you are now. And for others, it provides a framework. When they understand your story, they kind of understand more things about you. It's a way to interpret you and your actions and your choices and decisions, and that's the power of stories. They shape us. They in some ways they are us. But it's not just your story telling you who you are. Other people want to tell you their story because as your story shapes you, so do other people's stories shape you. And actually, it's not so much just other individuals trying to shape you with their stories. There's bigger stories, meta stories out there that are trying to change you. Our culture or trying to shape you. Our government, your boss at work, your company. Obviously, our families have stories that are very impactful on who we are. And of course, there's the whole kind of marketing, advertising industry. They're wanting to tell you a story, hoping that you will buy their product. Now, some of these bigger stories are useful in shaping us, and some others less useful. But I personally believe that God has a story, and I think in God's story, it's actually tells us who we're meant to be, and who we're meant to be. It might surprise you. It's not about control or coercion. It's actually about following rules. It's about our potential and about the relationships, the relational flourishing that's available for us. And so I personally believe, and you might disagree with this, which is fine, but I personally believe that God's story is also the story of us, of humanity. I think God's story is the story of our true identity. As a way to reflect that, let me read to you from 1 Peter 2 verse 9, in a passage in the New Testament. It says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." Now, there's a few things in that verse, facets of identity, and they're all encouraging. But I want to focus on one in particular, and that's the idea of being a priest, or maybe more precisely, of being priestly. Now, being priestly isn't just a job title. It is that for some people, of course, but I think it's meant to be not just for some people, it's meant to be part of everyone's story. And you might hear that and go, "Ken, you do not know my story. You do not know who I am. You do not know how particularly disqualified I am from fulfilling any kind of priestly identity." And you know, that's okay. You might feel disqualified, which is fine. Nonetheless, I think being priestly is central to the story of humanity. I think being priestly is central to the story of us. So what does that mean? Well, let me read to you from the Hebrew Bible, the book of Zechariah, which records a vision about a seemingly unqualified priest. Zechariah 3 verse 1. "Then he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right side to accuse him. Then the Lord said to Satan, 'The Lord rebuke you, Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this man a burning stick snatched from the fire?' Now Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes as he stood before the angel. The angel said to those who were standing before him, 'Take off his filthy clothes.' Then he said to Joshua, 'See, I have taken away your sin, and I will put fine garments on you.' Then I said, 'Put a clean turban on his head.' So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him, while the angel of the Lord stood by. The angel of the Lord gave his charge to Joshua. 'This is what the Lord Almighty says. If you will walk in obedience to me and keep my requirements, then you will govern my house and have a charge of my courts, and I will give you a place among these standing here.'" And so, an interesting passage, a vision, but a meaningful vision, because it's set in a time. This passage is set in a time after the people of God they'd gone to captivity. They'd been kind of taken captive, taken out of Israel, taken to Babylon. They'd been in captivity for over 70 years. And the reason why they were in captivity is because God allowed it, because Israel had in many ways fundamentally failed God over and over again. And they fundamentally failed God in the same way that a partner might cheat in their marriage. They might cheat on their husband or the wife. Israel had been, in the same way, unfaithful to God. And because of that, they were suffering the consequences of their choices. But because God still loved Israel, he brought them back from captivity, from Babylon, back into Jerusalem. And that's where we find ourselves now. However, Jerusalem had been destroyed. It's been lying in ruins for 70 years. The temple's been destroyed. The house has been destroyed. Hardly anyone lives there. And there's these people back there now. And so our passage is set in this time when God's people who had been in captivity and because they had fundamentally failed God over and over again, and really the way they failed was, instead of blessing the nations, which was always their mission, they had fallen into becoming like them. They'd become like the nations in the nation's injustices and abuses. And so Zechariah is shown this vision after the return from exile of the high priest Joshua, who has returned from captivity to Jerusalem, and the temple is lying in ruins, and they're wondering what they're going to do now. And in a situation like this, I imagine that Joshua can feel like a fraud. He's got the title of a high priest, yet he's a high priest of a pile of rubble, of ruins. And I can relate to this idea of feeling a bit like a fraud, a bit like an imposter. I remember when I was invited to be part of a committee at the university I'm a chaplain at. They needed someone who has kind of chaplaincy skills, I suppose. And all of a sudden I'm on this committee and I'm surrounded by all these professors, people who are recognized internationally, leaders in their field, highly published, experts. And I've never felt like so much like an imposter in my entire life. What am I doing here? What do I have to offer? I'm just going to be sitting here, all these people are going to be saying things, I'm going to have no idea what they're talking about. Now, actually, that situation has actually turned out really well for me. I'm so thankful I got that opportunity. I'm so thankful that I rode out that imposter syndrome. But I know that we can feel like an imposter a lot because we think we need qualifications that we don't have. And I think it's reasonable to assume that there was some level of imposter syndrome for Joshua. After all, look at these verses. Look at verse 3. Now Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes as he stood before the angel. Now, in our discussions about being priestly, you may have a sense that you don't feel priestly, that you have been disqualified in some way. Perhaps you don't feel holy enough because of what you have done or what has been done to you. And these verses speak about a high priest with filthy robes as Satan stands beside him, accusing him. Satan accuses us because that's his name. Literally, Satan is the Hebrew word for accuser. The accuser accuses us. People around us accuse us. Sometimes we ourselves accuse us. Ken, you're no good. What are you doing in this committee? You're not as smart as these guys. But even though everyone around us might be accusing us, I don't think God even though we accuse ourselves, I don't think God accuses us. Zechariah 3 verse 2 says, "The Lord said to Satan, the Lord rebuke you, Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this man a burning stick snatched from the fire?" And I think in this passage we see how God responds. God responds to the accuser. It's clarifying for us as well. God responds by rebuking Satan and draws attention to how Joshua has been saved from the fire. God saved Joshua from the fire. God hadn't chosen Israel because they were strong, hadn't chosen Joshua because he's wearing nice clothes. God had chosen Israel and Joshua because they were in need of a savior. And I think we can benefit from pressing into that revelation of our weakness. Actually, it's okay to feel disqualified. It's okay to feel underqualified. It's okay to feel like we haven't got it all together. It's okay to admit to weakness in our lives. Because as we do that, we allow for God's image and glory to be displayed in and through us more clearly. We don't need to have it all together. In fact, thinking we have it all together is perhaps the one thing that stops God doing what he wants to do in our lives. Because when we think we have it all together, maybe even if we pretend that we have it all together, we think and we pretend that we don't need God's love. Moving on to Zechariah 3, verses 4 and verse 7. "See, I have taken away your sin, and I will put fine garments on you. You will govern my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you a place among these standing here." The vision ends with Joshua's filthy clothes being removed and replaced with fine garments and a clean turban. God had dressed him for his true priestly calling and given him a place of belonging. He now wore a uniform which represented God, and as a priestly garment carried the names of all the tribes of Judah on it. He would wear and bear the names of his people as he met with God in the temple and oversaw the courts. And I think in the face of external and internal accusations that we could never be priestly, it's important to remember that God is the one who cleanses us. That God is the one who clothes us. And the reason he does that is because he has called us to be priestly. It's baked into our humanity. Anyway, that's what I think. I'll be interested to know what you think as well. Here are some questions for discussion. Have you ever felt accused by others, or by your own thoughts, or by shame? I'm interested in understanding what are the pressures in our lives that make us feel inadequate at times. And what about this whole dimension of comparison? Is comparing ourselves to others helpful or unhelpful? In what ways? Another group of questions. What's helped you to stop feeling like an imposter? Did you just write it out? Is that the only, just fake it till we make it? Is that the only option we have, or are there others? And how does Zechariah's vision of dirty clothes being replaced speak to experiences of feeling disqualified? And what difference does it make that God himself is the one that rebukes the accuser? Joshua is silent in the face of in his imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, in the face of all the obstacles in front of him. He's silent. God's the one who speaks. What does that mean? Finally, God both cleanses Joshua and gives him a new role, gives him a uniform. What does this tell us about how God restores people? And what does it tell us about why God restores people? Anyway, I hope that provokes some discussion, and I'd love to get some feedback somehow. But that's all from me, guys. Thank you.